people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. The World Boxing Council is standing firm against women fighting for 3-minute rounds. The other 3 alphabet organizations haven't taken the hardline stance that the World Boxing Council has, which calls into question, why are the WB so rigid on this? The World Boxing Council is standing firm in its position to not sanction 3-minute round fights for women in the face of several fighters vacating their titles in protest. MVP fighters Amanda Serrano, Chantel Cameron, and Alicia Baumgartner have all vacated their WBC titles, demanding that the WBC allow 3-minute rounds for women's boxing. Cameron was the latest to vacate her super lightweight title last week, though it's widely being interpreted a stance of convenience that for Chantel, it's not really about the 3-minute rounds, since she was never that vocal about that issue. It's about avoiding Sandy Ryan, who the WBC ordered her to fight. I've always believed in equality, and that includes the choice to fight equal rounds, equal opportunities, and equal respect, Cameron said in a statement. I'm proud of my accomplishment in becoming a WBC world champion, but it's time to take a stand for what's right and for the future of the sport. The WBC has responded in a statement holding their ground by citing comprehensive clinical studies conducted by medical experts that suggest that female athletes experience greater susceptibility to concussion, higher symptom severity, and longer recovery durations compared to males. The independent study cited was conducted by Pink Discussions. The WBC was the first organization to implement the Women's Boxing Championship. WBC President Mauricio Suleiman wrote on the WBC website, "We've supported women's boxing through many initiatives, but most importantly, through our commitment to safety. This is not about equality, sexism, or discrimination. It is purely about protecting athletes." MVP, co-founded by Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, has advocated heavily for equality in women's boxing. Their January 3rd fight card in Puerto Rico will feature 2 women's title fights that will be contested under rules equal to men with 10 3-minute rounds. Serrano will defend her WBO and WBA featherweight titles against her old buddy Erica Cruz. And Stephanie Hahn will put her WBA lightweight title on the line against Holly Holm. Alicia Baumgartner was scheduled to defend her WBA, WBO, and IBF junior lightweight titles against Layla Boudoir in 12 3-minute rounds in the co-main event of the recently canceled Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis exhibition fight. Not all MVP fighters have relinquished their WBC titles. Undisputed champion Shernika Johnson has yet to vacate hers in protest of the WBC's hardline stance, which brings to light the point I was about to make, that not every female fighter wants to fight for 3-minute rounds. I've spoken to a few who take the stance that why should they fight for extra time if it doesn't get them extra money? This feeling is not unanimous and uniform among women boxers. They don't all seem to take the same stance when it comes to 3-minute rounds. Some say, why fight for extra time if it doesn't get you extra money? I remember when I spoke to Natasha Jonas 2 or 3 years ago, she said, if the only appeal for 3-minute rounds in a women's boxing match is more time to knock the other girl out, then she's not really for it. Is that the only real appeal of it? More time for girls to knock each other out? The argument has been made that more knockouts equals more marketability in the sport of boxing, that casuals do love knockouts, and if the women had more time, they'd be able to get more of them and thus increase the profile of the sport. And yet, women's boxing is bigger now than it ever has been without the 3-minute rounds. So how relevant is this particular issue to increasing the profile of the sport? There are plenty of women out there fighting for 2-minute rounds, that still rack up knockouts. Look at Gabby Fundora, the undisputed flyweight champion. She fights for 10-2s and she knocks girls out. Is it possible the relevance of that extra minute in a round is being overstated? Overstated in terms of its ability to produce knockouts and overstated in its ability to increase the profile of women's boxing. You know, some people actually like the 10-2s because it sets a very fast pace for a fight. There's no time to go in there waltzing and dicking around. You're not going to bump into too many boxing matches, boring ones, involving the girls like what you saw with Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez, or Shakur Stevenson and Nicotila de los Santos. That doesn't often happen in women's boxing because they don't have time to mess about. Just circling each other, staring at each other without throwing any punches. They have to step into it. They have to impose their will because they don't have a lot of time, and that is a direct byproduct of 2-minute rounds. So there is a virtue there, and I wonder that MVP isn't beating the drum a little bit too hard on this particular issue. In any event, some of MVP's fighters have taken their stance, and the WBC maintains theirs. They will not sanction a women's boxing match for 3-minute rounds. So they're at a stalemate. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, reactions are still pouring in to DAZN's big rollout, what's supposed to be their ultimate tier. Most reactions are negative, have been. This one surprised me. Longtime friend of the channel, Mr. Ardor, said, "Always respect for UIQ, but I'm paying for the ultimate. I'm also able to. Additionally, it's not on top of your subscription fee. I had the annual and just upped to ultimate. Of course, you're going to pay more when discounted pay-per-views are involved. If you get it now, we are getting 3 pay-per-views in 2 months. Eubank vs. Ben, Benavidez vs. Yard, and Inoue in December. There's no Paramount that's going to come in and break out a Brinks truck for boxing. This isn't as bad as you're making it seem. What it is faith, more than anything, that the events will be worth it. If you're a fan that watches it all, it's for you. If not, guess what? Don't pay." Interesting points. Good arguments, I would say, but understand this. When the platform is making a promise to do 12 pay-per-views annually, what you have to ask yourself is, were they doing 12 pay-per-views before, or are they only doing now that many so they have a reason to charge you? So they can justify charging you extra on top of your already existing subscription, and that is what they're doing. It is on top of what you're already paying if you are paying. Mr. Ardor continued, "I'm going to try it for a year, and if it's not worth it, I'm out. But I'll gladly take this option as a fan over paying max price each time. Keep in mind, the annual was $249, so you're paying $200 more a year. $200 and you'll get all 12 plus pay-per-views they have for boxing. I'll take it. People blow money on everything. Eating out, dancing, hobbies, drinking, gaming, gambling. I chose this." I respect the argument, and I respect Mr. Ardor. And I, like Mr. Ardor, do purchase a good number of these pay-per-views, if not all of them, annually. So when you buy that many pay-per-views in a calendar year, this plan might seem like value for money. Value for money to you, since you already buy a lot of this stuff. But what if you don't? What if you only buy the occasional pay-per-view? What if you only buy a pay-per-view here and there? Suddenly, this extra subscription, well, it's not value for money. It's just a fee on top of another fee. Another paywall. It's still deceptive, Mr. Ardor. For Turkey LL Sheikh to have said over the summer months that they're moving away from pay-per-view just to end up doing more of them, they still lied. I went through the itemized list of pay-per-views that I've purchased already in the previous calendar year, and I noticed that there were not 12 pay-per-views there, even though I purchased the vast majority of them. So that if you're now doing more pay-per-views and it looks that way, what constitutes even billing a fight as a pay-per-view? Mr. Ardor, do you believe that Moses Atalma versus Dillian White should have been a pay-per-view? Do you believe that Fabio Wortley versus Joseph Parker, should that have been a pay-per-view? Ben versus Eubank? Because if you do, that's where we differ. I don't think those fights should have been pay-per-views, at least not to Americans. If you want to bill those as pay-per-views to the Brits, go ahead. That's the target audience anyway. But we as Americans should not have had to have paid extra for that. Those are the kind of fights that we used to get regularly, at no additional charge, on DAZN, on ESPN. It didn't cost you $60 a pop to see those fights, but now it does. The first Ben versus Eubank fight was only $25. How is it $60 now? Inoue. Naoya Inoue, from the moment that I found out about this fighter, I never had to pay extra to see him. In the World Boxing Super Series, in some of the biggest fights of his career, like the Donaire fight, the Neary fight,
The Fulton fight.
it never costed me anything extra to see this guy, whereas now, if I want to see him, I either have to pay $60 or sign on for this ultimate package. So it all means the same thing. Extra money. I have to pay more now to see the same guy.
To see him fight Alan Picasso.
Which is what fuels the suspicion that all they're doing is taking fights you were already getting and making them more expensive, rebranding them as pay-per-views, where initially, this is what you were already watching. It just costs more now.
And it's wrong.
And when they talk about 12 or more pay-per-views in a calendar year, what else are we talking about? Misfit pay-per-views? Influencer boxing?
Oh, God.
Some people don't take in that shit, you know. Some people don't watch that stuff. It's not appealing. Is this supposed to represent value for money in the ultimate tier? That you get more parody boxing, more joke boxing?
Fuck that.
So think about it. They make a commitment to doing more pay-per-views annually, but are there actually 12 fights in the sport of boxing that warrant the extra surcharge?
I don't think so. Not that many. It sounds like you're just gonna put more fights behind more paywalls to extract more money, trying to squeeze blood out of a grape.
Prune juice out of the stone. And that's just the ones that they're doing on that platform. Amazon Prime does their own pay-per-views.
That's another fee on top of another fee.
When Zuffa Boxing launches in the coming calendar year, granted they're probably not going to do pay-per-views, but you still have to be subscribed to Paramount, so that's more money out of the boxing fans' pocket. And what about when Top Rank comes back? Who are they going to come back with? How much is that going to cost me? It's all part of a bigger picture, a bigger problem, and this is just compounding a problem on top of another problem. That boxing is getting way too expensive to watch for the common guy, common man.
Too expensive to grow as a sport and reach a casual audience because it's tucked away behind paywalls.
Funnily enough, I, like Mr. Ardor, in all likelihood, am going to subscribe to this ultimate tier because I do purchase a good number of these pay-per-views, so it might be value for money. To me the content creator and the hardcore boxing fan that buys everything.
Problem is, everybody don't do that. Everybody don't spend on boxing what I spend on boxing because it's not their bread and butter. For them, it's just entertainment. So DAZN has to justify to those people why they should have to pay that much.
Seems like a lot. Men's junior middleweight news, the continued fallout of yesterday's action in Fort Worth, Texas. Eddie Hearn now says Jaron Ennis has options beyond just Virgil Ortiz, and he may need to explore them, since everything we're hearing from the Virgil Ortiz side of things is non-committal to a Boots Ennis fight. Hearn described the fight in March or April as realistic for the 36th of Ennis's career and revealed that he would consider Ennis's fellow Philadelphian, Danny Garcia, another appealing opponent should Garcia choose to fight again. The main thing is we want to fight Virgil Ortiz, Hearn told Boxing Scene. We've agreed to that fight in principle. We all sat in a room. Yada yada yada. Jaron signed for the fight, but he also wants to win those championship belts, which Virgil doesn't have. Whether that's Murtazaliev, whether that's the WBA champion Abbas Baru, whether that's Xander Zayas, whether that's Fundora, we don't care. The other name that I'm interested in, because I think commercially it's a big fight, is Charlo. But a lot of these guys, sometimes they just price themselves out of the fight. Keith Thurman is another example. They all talk a great game, Charlo included, but then you go, yeah, Charlo, we're up for that. I want $5 million. Fuck off, mate. If you really want to fight, we can get these fights made. If you don't, and you just pluck a number from thin air, don't worry about it. We've got other options. But we're really happy with where Boots is, and the next fight with him will be key.
You saw a good number of PBC fighters sniffing around yesterday. Errol Spence Jr., Jermel Charlo.
I think the entire buildup of Ortiz versus Lubin, Eddie Hearn knew that Team Ortiz are non-committal to the Boots fight, irrespective of his positive attitude and what the DAZN platform might want. The people at Golden Boy, they don't want that fight. They don't want it right now. They don't want Boots Ennis. So they show up to the Ortiz fight with the understanding that they're not likely to get it afterwards, but it's still good publicity. It's still good build-up for what could become their fight down the line.
Asked about Danny Garcia, at 37, a decade older than Ortiz Jr., who stopped Daniel Gonzalez in October in a fight promoted as the last of his career, Hearn responded, "Those guys are not friends, but they're both from Philly. It's a big fight. As I understand it, it was Danny Garcia's last fight, but he looked pretty good. He's got a great left hook, hasn't he? It would be a massive fight for Philly."
Admittedly, it's a fight I've wondered about myself. Boots Ennis versus Danny Garcia, the high-profile gatekeeper that only really gets fights for the same reason that Mario Barrios gets fights. It's because of how beatable he is. What he is a high-profile gatekeeper. When you hear that Virgil wants to fight Errol Spence Jr. and Boots Ennis may fight Danny Garcia, it gives you a good glimpse at what's wrong with the American boxing scene.
Is Eddie Hearn wrong, though? Would that fight not do good business in the city of brotherly love?
I think it would, actually, if you made a fight between Boots Ennis versus Danny Garcia, but what would it cost you to get Danny Garcia in the ring? To the point that Eddie Hearn previously made, these guys will say that they want the fight and then ask for the moon and the stars. The number that he threw out there, $5 million, do you believe that Danny Garcia would fight Boots Ennis for anything under $5 million? And if you kick out $5 million to Danny, what are you going to have to kick out to Boots? And at what point do the operational costs force you to bill it as a pay-per-view? Because if you kick out 5 to Danny and say 3 or 4 to Boots, well, what's that, $7-8 million?
It's close to $10 million, but Boots versus Garcia is nowhere near a $10 million fight. Danny Garcia just fought in front of a half-empty Barclays Center. Why would you kick out that kind of money for him? Jermell Charlo was a better shout, especially since Jermell has some claim towards the junior middleweight lineage. The problem with him is he hasn't fought in 2 years.
Now in his mid-30s, having not fought in 2 years and having not made junior middleweight in 3, can he even make that weight anymore? He was in attendance for the fight. He was campaigning for a Boots fight, but once again, what would it cost Matchroom to get him in the ring with Boots? If it's between Danny and Jermell, I would rather see Boots fight Jermell.
Though overall, I would rather see Boots fight the winner of Kelly versus Murtazaliev. More to the point, I would rather see Boots fight a champion at the weight, fight for a title, than fight a bunch of has-beens, a bunch of scrubs that are no longer relevant to this division or this sport. Suppose that was the whole point of getting involved in the Murtazaliev versus Kelly fight, to have the winner of that fight in your back pocket as an option for Boots. Things don't work out between Boots and Ortiz, he can fight the winner of that fight.
It's what I would rather, it's what I think we all would prefer collectively, to see Boots fight for a title in his next fight. Eddie Hearn is right that Boots has options, not exclusive to Virgil Ortiz, but some of those options are a lot better than some others. We'll see which one he lands on in the coming calendar year.